Hello, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Professor, a crowd-supported, crowd-driven feature where we respond to your questions on political philosophy, economics, history, culture, geopolitics, all those things that matter to us in our common life as citizens. And today's question comes from Steve, and he asks, if we can consent to die, does that make dueling legal again? Which I think is another excellent question, and one which exposes the contradiction in modern thinking about rights. I've always been perplexed by this. If the subject is abortion, you hear people saying, oh, a woman has absolute control over her own body. No other consideration should be taken into account. And then you say, oh, well, if that's the case, does that mean she has the right to choose to smoke or smoke marijuana or not wear a safety device in a boat? Oh, no, heavens no. She's the property of the state. It's a real now you see it, now you don't kind of freedom, in which you are given absolute liberty to do what they think you should do, and almost no liberty to do what they think you shouldn't do. You know, we have this Charter of Rights that guarantees us all these glorious freedoms, only to the extent that infringements on them can be justified in a free and democratic society, and to an amazing degree, the Supreme Court finds that if it's a progressive intervention, it's justified. And so various rights like free speech. And don't forget, the critical thing about free speech is your right to hear those opinions you want to hear. So again, a woman has complete control over her own body. You'd think that she would have the right to put ideas in through her ear into her brain, where she would then think about them, even if they were widely regarded as obnoxious ideas. But no hate speech. Because, poor dear, you're not able to make your own judgments about that. And so I think it's very clear that we will not, in fact, be given the right to consent to be killed in a duel. It's hard enough to give consent to be beaten up. And there's a pretty strong prohibition on prize fighting in this country for the most part, even though, obviously, someone who steps into a boxing ring hoping to get a big payday, but knowing that they might well get beaten unconscious by the other person, is fully aware of the risks. And again, if it's your own body, why can't you consent to have somebody hit it? Now, by the way, a partial answer to this question, why you couldn't consent to be murdered, leaving aside euthanasia for a moment, is that murder is an offense against the community, that it is the body politic in the form of the state that objects to murder. And this is why private people cannot waive criminal complaints. But that once you allow euthanasia, and once, in my view, once you allow abortion, because I take the view that the fetus is, in fact, a different person based on the fact that it has different DNA. It is not just a part of the mother's body. But for the moment, let's leave that one aside. Once you allow euthanasia, then it is very hard to understand why you could consent to have your body destroyed in this way for this approved set of reasons, but not in that way for that approved or disapproved set of reasons. And one possible answer, by the way, John Locke, who is, I think, the great theorist of the libertarian vision of self-ownership and the relationship of a free person to the state, the idea that we enter into a political community and we delegate some rights that we have to the state, including our right to self-defense, but we don't give them up, and if the state cannot or will not protect them, they revert to us. Locke actually believed that we were really holding our persons in trust from God, and so he said you can't commit suicide, you're not allowed to desert your post. But if you're a libertarian without believing in God, then you really ought to believe in the right to euthanasia, assisted suicide, unassisted suicide. You also ought to believe in the right to duel and do all kinds of other things. And by and large, I am a conservative. I'm a libertarian on policy, but a conservative on metaphysics, because I do think that we're answerable to God for how we do or do not obey his law. He has given us free choice in order that we may choose right. But it is very inconsistent to say that we are to be permitted to destroy ourselves with the aid of others for reasons that the state approves of, but not for reasons the state disapproves of, because that means that the state, instead of receiving its powers from us, has arrogated to itself the right to decide how those powers are to be used. And in this sense, all our rights simply become permissions. For my money, we shouldn't allow dueling, and we shouldn't allow euthanasia. But you're right, Steve, that there is a terrible inconsistency, and it shows the metaphysical hollowness of the modern project unless you are willing to go all out and say citizens are the property of the state, and that's how this all works. But if you're going to talk the language of rights, as people like our current Prime Minister do, then to say you get these rights only if you use them the way I say, but you don't get those ones because you're using them in ways I don't want, or you go, zoot, zoot, here it isn't, then what you're seeing is hypocrisy attached to the wielding of great power, and that is an unappealing and a dangerous combination. If you're enjoying Ask the Professor, and you would like to pose a question, because all the questions are from viewers, this URL will tell you how to do it. And because the feature is crowd-driven, if you think it's worthwhile, please click here and make a contribution to sustain this and all my other work. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.